Thanks everybody for being with me. Last night when I went to bed after the vote for the referendum had been called, I felt angry. I think I was even depressed to think that here in Australia we are so out of touch with the needs of Indigenous people that we would vote no for recognition in the Constitution and for a voice to Parliament. Now, to me, it's always been a simple request. And I agree with Anthony Albanese that there was nothing really complicated about it. But as the campaign progressed, it became more and more evident that misinformation, disinformation, letting people know that perhaps they're going to lose their backyard if this if this referendum was agreed to, and a whole host of other statements that were made that were completely disingenuous and dishonest. Now, when I went to bed last night, I was thinking, Australians, this is a scourge on Australians. This is a black mark against us, because it does tend to highlight one simple fact to me, and that is we are a racist nation. That we couldn't, in our hearts, we couldn't deep down acknowledge that something needed to be done that was constructive and positive for Indigenous people. As a result of that, the majority of Australians, a large percentage in fact, have chosen to vote no. Now, I don't know whether that's because we're ignorant, and maybe that's part of the problem. There were some people that said that people didn't even know that the referendum was taking place. I find that a bit hard to imagine. I can't imagine what bubble you live in that you weren't aware of that. And then people said they didn't understand the content, what it was about. And it was simple. It was just a voice to Parliament to be recognised in the Constitution. Indigenous people, 65,000 years of culture and history that finally would be recognised. So what does that mean about Australia? Well, I've been wrestling with this notion that we're racist. When I went to bed last night, I was thinking, well, we are. And I was angry. I found it difficult to sleep last night. I was so distressed by the result of this referendum. And I kept on wondering, well, is it because we're ignorant, and is that part of the problem? And it appears from some of these results that perhaps it was, because it was the wealthier, more better educated part of our communities that voted yes. And the outer regions and some of the remote areas voted no. What disappointed me greatly was here in South Australia, where we've known ourselves as being a progressive state for a long, long time now. We voted overwhelmingly no. 39% voted yes, the rest were no. And it horrified me to think that I live in a state which obviously has very little consideration to the well-being of Indigenous people, that don't care about them. And this is astounding to me, given that we're a large state, our populace occupies a very small portion of this state, most of it's remote, and most of those people that live in that remote area are Indigenous people. So we seem to be saying we don't care about you. We don't give a fuck about how you live your lives and how we and the decisions that we make impact you. It is a shame, it is an embarrassment to think that I live in a state which is highly, I think, either ignorant or racist or both. Because let's face it, if you're racist, you're probably pretty ignorant. So it was with a great deal of disappointment. And of course, one of the arguments that's come out, or one of the issues that seemed to be dominant of this campaign, really was the role that Indigenous people played on the no side. And Jacinda Price and Warren Mundine were two of those primary people. In fact, they were the face of the no campaign. Would this have been different had we had a more bipartisan approach? Probably would have made some shades of difference, but may not have been enough to push it over the line because of the racism that sits in this country. Now, my attitude towards Price and Mundine is quite stark. I mean, I think that they're people looking for power, authority. Warren Mundine will probably be offered a position in the Senate for the Liberal Party at some point, and Jacinta Price just wants to make a name for herself. As opposed to Lydia Thorpe, well, she sits right at the other end of that spectrum. Who knows what will happen to her? Will these people become more and more insignificant now that the vote's been taken? Probably so. But one of the things that struck me, and I'm going to play this video for you in just a moment, was that these two people were the people that appeared in front of the press once the vote was declared. Now, they both, I think, and I don't know, I'm just speculating here, I think that as Indigenous people, they're embarrassed by the position that they took. And there's a couple of examples of this. So in this video I'm about to show you, Jacinta Price starts talking about, I'm not going to show you all of that, but she starts talking about remote areas and the voting process within remote areas and how people felt intimidated by those people handing out how to vote cards. And if we had cameras there, it would be completely different, blah, blah, blah. It's a furphy. No one knows whether that's true or not. But if that's the best argument that she could make, given that they just won this referendum, or her side won this referendum, then it's pretty pathetic. Then Warren Mundine decides to leap in and becomes very, very angry at the reporters asking him questions. Now, I think 2 points. Number one is that Jacinta was feeling so embarrassed about the decisions that she'd made leading up to this campaign and her involvement throughout the whole thing, that the best she could do is think about polling booths. And Warren is feeling embarrassed because of the decision that he made to betray his people. That he actually now knows that the way he operated, the decisions that he made throughout this campaign, the support of the No campaign, was a betrayal of his own people. And it was almost like this came out at a point, because he starts talking about things that are relevant to Indigenous people. And he now knows that the closing of the gap is less likely now that this campaign has come to an end and that the referendum has voted no. So I'm just going to play this clip of Warren going right off at the press. And let me know down below in the comment section, what do you think about all of this?
You know what? People are committing suicides in these communities. People are being raped and beaten, and this is the questions you come up with? Where's about getting results? Getting people reducing suicide instead of this nonsense that you people carry on with. It's about time. We had a vote tonight that said Australians want to get things done.
No, you idiot. We had a vote tonight that said that Australians don't give a rat's ass about Indigenous people. That is what the vote said. The vote did not say that we want to get things done. And that I think the issue here for me is that Warren Mundine suddenly started to realise that all of this has meant nothing, will produce nothing, will create an environment which is built on racism. Nothing more, nothing less. He's disingenuous and he's fake. He's artificial. He has done the wrong thing, and I think to some extent at that particular point in time when being asked questions by the reporters, he came to realise that he's stuffed up and he has no way of going back now. And you know, I don't know what it's like for someone who feels that they've betrayed their race. I wouldn't understand what that feels like. But I bet you in this moment he does. And to me, that's the most important point. He understands this right now. And so what happens as a result of all of this? Well, we wind up with people like Andrew Bolt and the right wing. And this is where they start to politicise this whole event. And so what do when they politicise it? They choose to be able to make up stuff about Anthony Albanese. And here we have a clip where Andrew Bolt, and I'm going to play all of this because he's an insult. Yeah, I think he's the most saddest, pathetic human being that I can imagine. Because where he goes with this is focusing on the fact that Anthony Albanese needs to resign. Now, when I looked at, and the thing that I admired most about the Yes campaign is that they haven't gone out after other people, and even though they've had every excuse to, because of the misinformation that's been put out there, and Peter Dutton's abysmal, appalling behaviour in relation to all of this, and that the right now think that they have the right to be able to ask Anthony Albanese to resign. They think that this is the end of Anthony Albanese. I will challenge that view. I think that this is perhaps the beginning of Anthony Albanese. They're about to see a side to Anthony Albanese that they've never ever encountered before. And I think that to some extent it's going to get a little bit ugly, because Albanese is going to start to come out after them in the same way that they come out after him. Well, at least that's what I hope happens. So this is the bit where Andrew Bolt declares that Anthony Albanese should resign.
Emphatic win for the no vote.
Well, I don't know why there's been so many long faces tonight. I think this is a brilliant day for Australia, absolutely brilliant. We've defeated an attempt to divide us by race.
This shits me off. The division in relation to race came about from the right, not from the left, not from the Yes campaign. This has specifically been instigated, created by this dickhead. This is the guy, and Credlin and some of his other crew have chosen to divide the nation. And this is where projection is an issue. These guys are projecting their own stuff out onto us, the media. And the media itself needs to take responsibility for a lot of these issues that they failed to confront because they listened to jerks like this one.
We've stood for the principle of one person, one vote. I think it's marvellous. It seems Australians have seen through the falsehoods of the Yes campaign. I just wonder now how Anthony Albanese can stay on as Prime Minister. I mean, he's put us through this nightmare. He's wasted nearly $400 million of taxpayers' money. He's had Australians at each other's throats. Some of the scenes in some of the polling booths over the last couple of days, like the monstering of Warren Mundine, have been disgraceful. And unfortunately, the poison from all this will survive beyond today. There's going to be a battle to interpret what this vote means. Already, well, the whole campaign, Albanese and others have been saying this is about how nice we are to Aborigines, it's about racism. How can you then say, Australians are racist? This would be...
Easy. I can do that easily. Australians, this vote has actually declared that Australia is a racist country. And in fact, the media, there's a wonderful article in Michael West's webpage, which is Stuck in a Colonial Past. The world condemns, so I'll try and bring this up for you. Stuck in a Colonial Past, the world condemns Australia's no vote on The Voice. A chorus of chagrin greeted news of a no vote at Saturday's The Voice referendum, but the damage for Australia, especially in our own Asia Pacific region, could go further than a bruised reputation. Just as Australians couldn't quite comprehend Brexit or the election of Donald Trump, it seems foreigners can't get their heads around why we said no to The Voice. America's newspapers of record, the New York Times, captured the global sense of bewilderment and let down last night. Australia had crushed Indigenous hopes that the country was finally taking a step to do right by them after centuries of abuse and neglect. And that says it all. That somewhere, at some point, we are now being recognised around the world as a racist country. And I concur. We are. and that we should do better. What happens after this particular point, I don't know. I'm hoping that we can seek reconciliation. I think that one of the things that Albanese's government could do is implement a legislated voice to Parliament of some description, so that at least we can acknowledge that Indigenous people are being recognised as they should have been done had this voice referendum been successful. So I'll be interested to know what you think about all of this. Do you think that there's a lot of people saying no? Those people, there's a lot of people who step back and say, we are not a racist nation. Well, I would suggest that a vote like this would strongly indicate that we are. It was a simple request. We couldn't come to it because we don't believe enough about Indigenous affairs, that we're ignorant, and that ignorance breeds racism. It's as simple for me as that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. In the meantime, we'll try and wrestle with this as best as we can, and I don't know where we go from here. I'm confused, I'm lost, I'm still feeling angry, not as angry as I was last night, but certainly still feeling angry about the outcome of this referendum. I say at the end of all of my posts that I just want to think of you as being safe and caring and loving towards each other. That's important. I'm not feeling all that loving myself at the moment towards those people that voted no. And I'm a little bit scared as to where this is going to go from this point on. Take care, look after yourselves, and as I said, be safe.